We are going to go ahead and get the Ghost microphone installed in here. It'll take a little bit of adjusting. I believe the glass doors are going to come off, and there'll be some stuff added into it, and sort of definitely some lighting, and also the electronics that are needed to basically amplify the Ghost microphone so that people will be able to hear it. Adam had a question. He was wondering whether or not I actually had permission to do something with this priceless family heirloom. So I'm coming to the source to make sure that I have permission. This is my mom, Mary Ann. Say hi. And I brought Mom into the workshop today to tell us a little bit more about where this cabinet came from, and to let everyone know that I do actually have permission to modify it for my crazy museum thing. So this was in a house that you moved into, right? How old were you?
I was in 7th grade.
Okay.
And we moved into a house in Chevy Chase that was fully furnished.
Okay.
The old guy that had lived there before, he was moving on and left everything behind.
Okay.
So this was part of the dining room set.
Okay.
And it sat in the corner of the dining room in Chevy Chase. It wasn't a very big dining room, so and my mom stored dishes in the top of it. She had, she had china that she stored in the top of it. We didn't really think of it as an heirloom because we never bought it, and it wasn't like passed down through the family.
Sure.
But there is a story that whenever anybody in my family mentions this piece, there's a story that goes along with it.
Yes.
On June 22nd, 1963, my mother went into labor with my youngest sibling.
Right.
So Mom and Dad weren't home because they were in the hospital having a baby.
That's reasonable, sure.
And Tombo was home with we can't remember who.
Not a good, some not ill-equipped babies
might
there.
have been Kathy.
Okay.
She has no recollection of this.
Okay. Block that out.
Block that out. But Tombo knew that not only did Mom store china in the top, she stored candy down in the bottom.
Yes.
And so he went to get some candy. Now, as you can see, it's really hard to get.
I mean, yeah, it's
the bottom is hard to get open.
Sure.
And as you can see, it's also rather
heavy. We can see where this is going, right?
Yes. He went to get the candy, and the whole thing came crashing down. It didn't hit him. It hit the dining room table.
Okay.
Things crashed, dishes broke.
Because this was the top half was full of china, right?
The top half was full of china, and I was just looking on here to see it.
Sure.
And he said, so there he was under the table with all this big
Right.
And that's the story of this.
And the glass, I mean, the fact that this is original glass, you know?
As far as we know.
Right, I mean, you guys never
and I just talked to him today.
Okay.
He's not 7 anymore.
Right. Good.
But he said it was a miracle.
Yeah.
That he didn't get crushed.
That's so crazy. Well, and I mean, I of course grew up hearing that story.
Yes.
And certainly word to the wise for me, if I'm going to be putting this in a public space, first of all, it probably will not have glass.
Okay.
For all sorts of reasons. But then definitely there should be some weight in the bottom or anchored to the wall.
Absolutely.
Which is why they have that kit with everything you get from IKEA now.
I mean, this is really impossible.
Yeah.
So that's, and you are welcome
thank
to
you.
use it. And
we have that on record.
Keep it in perpetuity.
The date of this tipping over, almost killing your brother, was 60 years ago. So presumably, so I mean, it's 100 years old.
It could
right?
very well be 100 years old. The man that had owned the house before, I just happen to remember his name was Mr. Truebody.
Oh, good to know. Okay.
And
I should.
My father used to say Mr. Truebody this and Mr. Truebody that.
Well, cool. I love knowing that it's Mr. Truebody's. I need to work that in somehow, or just a little nod or something. So awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming to
and I'm happy for you to have it and repurpose it.
Okay, excellent. There you go, Adam. The first thing that I acquired here are some PIR. These are motion sensors. So basically, something like this. Well, something like that, exactly this, will be installed somewhere on the display, and that will control all of the audio electronics. I still want the any lighting effects to be lit up properly so that it sort of draws somebody over to it. But then once someone is drawn near it, this motion detector will trip a relay. And we've got a bunch of relays in here. Cheaper to get a 10-pack. I'm sure we'll be using these for other projects. So basically the motion sensor trips the relay, and the relay then turns on the amplifier that will actually power the stuff. Two of these will be a part of the electronic components. Basically, one will be positive, one will be negative, and then all these other things that require 12-volt wires will come out of there and into these. And basically this unit will make these meters move as the amplifier is putting stuff out. So these meters, one of the things that I liked about this is that even if a person is not wearing the headphones, I still like the idea that if they're hearing a ghostly voice, even somebody who's standing nearby, not wearing headphones, they would be able to see this and see that this needle is moving, even though nobody that you can see is talking into the Ghost microphone. So yeah. So in addition to all of the elements that you see here, I've got a bunch more of stuff, more items in stock. I've got some 1/4-inch headphone jacks. So I've got a whole mess of those in a bin. I'll be using those to make sort of the headphone distribution stuff. I already have an amplifier, a small amp that I'm not using for something else. So I'm going to repurpose that. And then for the actual microphone build itself, I was thinking about maybe just getting a vintage microphone and saying, hey, it's a Ghost mic. But what I'm thinking about is it should really look cool, right? It should not look like a regular microphone. It should look like some weird thing that some guy put together in his basement in 1910. So what I'm thinking for that is I'll do some more tinkering, kind of like I did with the vacuum tank build. Basically some rummaging through around in some brass parts, trying to make a cool looking thing that looks like a microphone. But then in there will actually be a real microphone element, and I have a whole bunch of those as well, sort of a surplus kind of a deal. You know, I think all of the main components now are in stock. I did want to thank my producers of The Impossible who are able to help me make all of this happen on an extra special level. I'm talking about awesome folks like Jobeth R. Bowers, Mark Wolfire, Rich Thurfield, and Brian Teller. Thank you all so much for being a part of this. And now it's time for me to start stripping this down, and then we're going to build it back up and turn it into a Ghost microphone. So time for a time lapse. Here we go. So I started by taking the doors off the cabinet and then removed the bottom shelf, which we're not going to need, then gave the whole thing, then I took off these back panels, gave the whole thing a good wipe down and reinforced the panels on the back. Some of the staples had sort of come through. So I'm now going to put some curtains on the lower 2/3. And the way I'm going to do that is by cutting these pieces of plywood to match the 3 sides of the inside of the cabinet, both in the width as well as the height. And then once those pieces are the right fit, I'm going to upholster those pieces. And the advantage here is that if these pieces need to be cleaned or changed out at some point, then I'm able to do that without messing up the whole cabinet. So here's me dry fitting the 3 pieces, and I realize I have to do a little notching on the one in order to accommodate for the light. But then I'm looking through the scrap area here, and I found this piece of 1/4-inch that's going to be a good size, pretty much at the width it already is actually. It's going to be a good size for the back portion. So there's that. Those bits fit, and now it's just a matter of cutting off this little corner here, and now that piece is going to fit in no problem. So give them a good sanding, and that way I don't have any splinters or anything. I've decided I would do the hand sanding because the power sander was making a little too much dust. And then everything has to get wiped down because the next step is going to be doing some actual upholstery work. For the red curtain material that you see here, I already had that in stock actually from full-size curtains. And so I started by trimming it down to approximately the size that I thought I was going to need. And then this took an awful lot of doing. Here's my air stapler. I knew that I wanted a pleated curtain. So it took me a while to sort of wrap my head around the best way to do it. This is me pleating one side and then folding it, laying it down. And I realized that it was going to be very difficult to have it line up at the bottom. So I put this masking tape on, and then I pleated it and actually used a regular stapler, not a heavy duty stapler, but just like an office stapler, the black one there, and pleated the bottom. And then it was just a matter of sort of stretching it to go from the bottom down to the top, or top to bottom, whatever. And now I'm just securing it and finishing up the edges. Now it's time for a dry fit, and we're going to see how it does. And thankfully, it fit pretty well. All right, now I just have to do 1.5 more. So I decided not to document doing these other 2 panels because it was basically the same thing, although it went a little bit faster because I had learned some stuff. But yeah, I'm really happy with how this is looking. It matches sort of the idea that I had in my head. And I already have the little lights installed in the corners here. So once I get those wired up here, it is already starting to look like a little mini stage. And then with the lights out, yeah, this is exactly the look that I was going for. I don't yet have a stand for the Ghost mic, but here is a sneak preview of what it looks like. And so it's going to hang out sort of roughly there in the middle in its own little puddles of spotlights. I'm going to start on the amplifier cabinet for the Ghost microphone. When I say cabinet, I mean like a small little box thing. It's going to have a modern amplifier that looks like this. But I don't want anyone to see that because it looks way too modern. So I want to sort of build a housing around it that not only will hide that, but also I really like the idea of there being a little needle that goes whenever the sound is happening. So I made this in Photoshop. And basically everything is to scale. So we've got a power switch on the top left, as well as the input beneath that. And then top right is that gauge. And then the big circles near the bottom are going to be some knobs. And I think I'm going to add one more sort of cutout with the manufacturer. It's going to be a fictitious manufacturer, actually a fun nod to the original owner of this cabinet, which I think will just be a fun little Easter egg to put in there. So I have this template. This is a 1-to-1 scale, which means I can plop this right on a piece of wood and drill holes and cut everything just based on this template. And that way I know that all the little electronic components that have to go in there are going to fit just fine. So let's make an amp. This is one of my favorite ways to make a box that is a one-time only sort of deal, because I just sort of start with what's important. So in this case, the top faceplate here is the important part. And then I'm gonna make all the other pieces to match, and I'm gonna kind of just build it as I go. So right now I have 3 parts made. I've got the 2 sides, which I cut at a 20-degree angle just because I kind of liked it. Very arbitrary, and there's just something freeing and fun about not really worrying about the dimensions. On the one hand, it's thrilling when you can sort of make something precise and all your math lines up, but it's also kind of fun when it's something like this that doesn't, where the dimensions don't matter. With a box like this, I'm making the entire thing out of 1/4-inch Baltic birch plywood, and I'm using this pin nailer. Beautiful. And the pin nailer puts these teeny tiny nails in there. These nails don't really have a head on them, hence the name a pin nailer. And so they really are not structural, they really are just designed for holding something together while the glue dries. And that is totally what's going to happen here. This glue, when it dries, is going to be stronger than the wood itself. If I go through later and try to take this apart, the failure point is going to be the actual layers of wood, the ply, you know. Those are more likely to separate than these joints right here. So yeah, that is sort of what I'm thinking. I kind of like the idea that it's a little console. The front, I'm going to make a mesh grill. I'm going to go ahead and make a back and a bottom, and then I think it'll be time for some sanding and some staining. Hey, Peter Wood here. Real quick, if you're enjoying this video, I sure would appreciate a thumbs up or a comment from you. It costs you nothing and it's a huge help. This video is part of my Museum of the Impossible project, and there's a bunch more that I would love to share with you. If touring a Museum of the Impossible sounds like the kind of thing you'd enjoy, head on over to museumoftheimpossible.com. Okay, back to the video. My brother, Matt Wood, has a much better setup for this sort of cabinetry. He's got a lot more router bits and a great router table, and all that is going to make it a much faster way of putting these things together, but also it's going to look that much better because it's going to be like making a real cabinet door. So I've got some pieces of wood. I've got my CAD drawing here, and I'm gonna pop on over to Brother Matt's shop and let's make a front for this thing. Here we go. We are on the home stretch for the Ghost microphone cabinet. Let's make this happen. So what I'm working on right now is this platform that will live on top of the cabinet. Just like the top shelf on here, this is really just a place to store and display some other stuff. But I wanted to add the platform here because without the platform, if I put an object on the top, there's about 3 inches that are not seen. So not only will this help to raise up whatever I put on top of there, but also just like the shelf below it that has RGBW LED lighting, this also is going to have that. So that way whatever objects are up here are going to be lit the same way as the items below it. So I'm pretty happy with this. I don't think I'm gonna paint it because you've got to do this weird calculus of like, how many people will visit the museum who are taller than me? And when I stand at the front side of it, I can just barely not see this top surface here. I don't think anyone is going to see this back side because wherever this ends up, it should be in a corner, butted against 2 other cabinets or a wall or something. But my feeling is also, if for whatever reason, wherever it ends up is like at the bottom of a flight of stairs, and so I noticed that when you are walking down the stairs, you can see the top, I can always come back in later and paint it, but I just don't feel like wasting the time or effort now if nobody is ever going to see it. So that's what I'm thinking. So up next is figuring out how this gets installed and then go ahead and putting the RGBW lighting on there and getting it connected to what's underneath and then testing it all out. So yeah. It's all in the details, and this LED strip that's here, when we put the front cover on, you can still just see a little bit of this, and I don't want the light to be in people's eyes. So I'm going to cut a strip of wood that will attach onto the front of here behind the front piece, and that way all you'll see is the light coming up onto the objects that are in here, not that thing itself. Again, I'm close to the finish line, but now is not the time to trip. So just finished up the wiring for these headphone units that are going to be used for the Ghost microphone. I've got 4 of them, and I've got some supplies to make some more if I ever need to. That was part of the idea. The bell part is 3D printed here, and I've got a couple of extra speakers. But point being, I know that this is a thing that people are going to be interacting with, and therefore it's going to break and get damaged. So I would rather have it be something that I have in-house control over, meaning I can print some more and make some more, as opposed to I find some from some vendor and then years down the road they're not available anymore. So I'm also super happy with, I don't know if you can see here on the inside, let me get the angle just right. Yeah. We got the little Museum of the Impossible logo on there. Just a fun little touch that it's super bespoke. So we've got this good to go. And I'm going to go ahead and work on the wiring for those. Basically, those are going to plug into 4 different jacks with their own independent volume control. And those are going to go on the sides here of the frame, which I'm still working on, putting a few coats of this clear polyurethane on just to get it all sealed up. And so then once that gets finished up, I'll be able to put the plaques on there and get it installed on the cabinet. So on the home stretch. So these guys are going to hang 4 of these, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the sides of this. And I was trying to figure out, like a hook or something, but trying to a lot of this is going to be guess and test because I don't know what people are actually going to do. But I'm thinking if there's a hook, it may not end up back on the hook very often, but if there's some obvious and hopefully satisfying place for this to be dropped into, then that will sort of socially engineer people to put them back where they belong. At least that's the theory. So I'm going to design something, a 3D item. Just like this was 3D printed, I'll design something similar that this can sit in, and let's get that printed up and attached onto this cabinet. Finally done with this crazy door. I had to get the wiring figured out for the 4 jacks for the headphones, and then this one is going to be, this wire gets hooked up to the amplifier that's in the cabinet. So yeah, I'm gonna put this door on and start testing stuff out. We're super close here. I'm excited. Well, I'm an idiot. This wire is too short. It has to reach over there, and I got mixed up as to which side it was hooked up on. Yeah. So, let me think about this. I also got turned around a couple of times. I was right, and then I second guessed myself and thought I was wrong with where the wire was coming out. So that sucks. I can still change which side it hinges from, if that helps me with anything. But I can't change where the amplifier is because I already drilled that hole. So I think what makes the most sense at this point is to move the hinges to where the amplifier is, because I don't want the wire stretching out too far. I want the wire that connects to the amp to be on the side where the hinge is, and then I have to move the wire. This brown wire that's on that side has to move over to that side. So, that's all right. This stuff happens. It'll take me less than 10 minutes to fix the problem, so I'm not complaining. But gotta do that. So good news, everything's up and running now in terms of attaching this, and the wire's on the right side now. Bad news is when I'm plugging in the headphones, I wired them, I thought, so that I could hook it up to either a mono or a stereo headphone, even though right now I'm only using a mono headphone. But what that seems to be doing is definitely dropping the volume level. When I plug it in a little bit, it's mono, meaning one speaker, and that's great. The audio sounds fine. And then as soon as I plug it in all the way, it is getting really quiet. So I need to do a little more tinkering here, unfortunately. Man, I keep thinking we're close to the finish line here. This is what's so silly. This is not any tricky, impossible stuff. This is literally just trying to wire up multiple headphone jacks here with something custom, as opposed to just having something off the shelf that would allow people to plug into headphones. I realize I do it to myself, but hopefully it is a net positive in the end, so more tinkering. I'm gonna go ahead and call the Ghost microphone done. Oh, hang on, done. Caveats, asterisks, legal disclaimers, here we go. First, let me take on a little tour of what is going on with everything over here. The last time I shared a video, I thought I was close to the finish line, and I was, in the long term. But in sort of just the very basic early play testing, I discovered two design flaws that I had to correct, and both of those unfortunately required 3D printing, designing and 3D printing and painting new parts. So I wanted to show you those. Two things. First of all, there used to be a volume knob up here. There's not a volume knob up there anymore. And the reason is I discovered that the volume knob range was way too wide, meaning if it was at the halfway point versus the full on, it was a drastic difference in how loud it was. And I realized that if somebody is not thinking about the fact that they have a volume knob there, it could detract from their enjoyment of the exhibit, because it might be too quiet, it might be too loud, and they may not think or be looking for a possibility to change that. And so what that meant was that I had to make sure that the loudest point was not going to cause any feedback or issues. I discovered why in a museum they don't have a volume knob, and that is because it's better to try to find a mid-range, something that is going to still be intelligible to someone who's a little bit hard of hearing, but you're literally holding this earpiece to your ear. So hopefully it will be loud enough for the folks who might have a hard time hearing. And if it's too loud, you can hold it a little bit away from your ear and you can still have the experience. That is also something that I can adjust on a global level, how loud they all are together. I can change all of that down the road, so I'm not worried about it. The second thing that I had to redo is the holder that's sort of the cradle for the speaker units themselves. And if you want to take a look at this awesome new redesigned one right here, if you remember before, it was just sort of a cup just a cylindrical thing that stuck out of the wall, and it just wasn't, when you'd put it on top, sometimes it'd fall off. It didn't have any sort of satisfying sort of that. I think I said in an earlier video that I want it to be satisfying to put it away so that people will, as opposed to just leaving them dangling. But my other problem was I was thinking about a design with some sort of like a claw thing where you kind of pop it in and it makes a connection. But I've got to think about every time it pops in, every time it pops out, that's more friction and rubbing on both the thing itself and the speaker, and that's more replacement. I finally came up with the idea of let's just mount them on their side. And what occurred to me is that I already 3D printed this. And so I have the file for this, and so I can make a negative of that file. So what we have here is a perfect negative of this guy. And so when it's time to be done, you just sort of lay it like that, and look at that. Like it's just, you just kind of in the ballpark kind of, and then bam, it just pops right in. So I also kind of like the arrangement, how they're, a little bit of an angle there. I think that really, it looks nice. So here's what's going on now. I'm going to say it's done in terms of, I believe that all of the physical elements have been created. And so now it is just time for further play testing. I'm sure that there are other things about this that I haven't realized yet because it's only been me and a handful of folks who have had the opportunity to interact with it. So once I play around with that a little bit more, I'm sure there will be little tweaks and adjustments here and there. But I believe this is pretty much in its final form. We also have the plaque, of course, but then up here we have a new edition, the Cursed Book of Razgrad, and there's a wicked glare there, wicked glare. I was happy with how this turned out, and the idea being that I still want whatever's down here in the cabinet. I want the microphone to be the prominent part of this exhibit, but I do still have storage space in the top section and then actually up on top too. So I'm already thinking about the eye candy in the museum as sort of 3 different tiers. The primary tier are these sort of hero interactive displays, but then there can be a secondary tier of things like this that are labeled, but they maybe aren't as interactive or anything. And then there's also going to be other elements that I can put into the top here and certainly up on top. That's just going to be more eye candy, just something interesting to look at to sort of fill the space. I'm so excited to be at this point, and what that means is not only a little bit more playing with this, but also finally getting some proper work done here on the vampire skull, which was what I started with and then sort of had to put on pause while this is happening. Let's make some progress on that. I'm excited to start showing some people how this microphone lets them hear ghosts. Yeah.